I'm investing in seed and Series A, and that's very early, so I'm betting mostly on the founding team. The complementarity of the team is very important, how those backgrounds, tie or not into the growth of the company. And beyond that, as I said, focus on the business case, right? Is this founder going to be able to scale? Is this founder aligned with the venture backable model, right? Is this a venture backable business? And so what does that mean? That means that I'm looking for founders that are building companies that are target billion-dollar, markets or industries, right? That can really have a competitive edge to scale. And then also just the willingness of the founder to really partner and be part of this ecosystem that I'm building alongside other investors that are building new funds.
Mi gente, you were just hearing from Laura Maydon, founder and partner of Ascendo, a venture capital firm based in Miami seeking to invest nationwide in early stage companies led by exceptional diverse founders who are often overlooked and underfunded. I can't think of a more resonant or close to more resonant mission statement for this year as Latino businesses continue to grow and ever more need that capital to continue to scale and get to the next level. Laura and I met through her work in multiple ways, but most recently through Libra Leaders, which focuses all on helping Latinas do exactly this, scale their companies. Ascendo seeks visionary entrepreneurs who are using disruptive technologies that address the needs of growing demographics and empower women as catalysts of economic growth across Fintech, Healthtech, Edtech, future of work, and enterprise software. Prior to Ascendo, Laura had copious amount of experiences working with entrepreneurs. She founded Endeavor Miami, the first U.S. affiliate of a global organization. During this time, she led the organization. The portfolio of Endeavor entrepreneurs grew to 23 companies, which generated more than $250 million in revenue, several of which had successful exits. So today we're going to sit down with Laura, dig into this rich experience that she has working with entrepreneurs to talk about the specific challenges and opportunities that founders face in 2025, emerging trends across sectors where investors are paying attention, and the rise of cross-border Latino businesses, as well as how they will impact the global economy. Hay más por venir todavía, and y'all won't want to miss this episode. Thank you for joining us in this first season of Moneda Moves for 2025. You're listening to Moneda Moves, a podcast where we cover the intersection of money and cultura. I'm your host, Leanne Alfaro, a Latina award-winning journalist, producer, and strategist. On this podcast, I highlight Latinos who are building in the world of business, our relationships with money, and contributions to the American economy. Here we will increase transparency around our dinero issues and achievements of our community, as well as our POC peers, to inspire you to pursue your financial poder. Join me weekly during this season as we cover stories with our communities front and center alongside entrepreneurs and innovators. No te lo quieres perder. Mi gente, welcome back to another episode of Moneda Moves. It is 2025, and we're talking all about the trends that Latino entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at large will see this year to come. Joining me today is Laura Maydon. She is founder, investor, and board member, right now founder and partner at Ascendo, a venture capital firm based in Miami, seeking to invest nationwide in early stage companies led by exceptional, diverse founders. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited about this conversation.
Me too. And Laura, you have such a rich wealth of experience, not just here in the U.S. as an investor, but also cross-border. So I want to start by talking a little bit more about that. As founder at Ascendo, talk to us about what specific challenges and opportunities you foresee for Latino entrepreneurs in this upcoming year.
Excellent. Yes. So as you know, through Ascendo, I'm building a long-lasting platform that is able to unlock trillion-dollar opportunities within these underserved economies. And I do that by focusing on investing, as you said before, in founders from underrepresented segments that address the needs of the fastest growing demographic segments in the US, and that empower women as well. So when you look at US trends, I'm very excited, and this is the opportunity, right? I'm very excited that in the next 5-10 years, we're gonna face massive technological disruption, as you know, that is converging with shifts in demographics and economic power. And the Latino economy is leading in growth. Latino economy, as you know, represents 3.8 trillion GDP, which would be equivalent to the fifth global economy if it was its own country. And it also is the fastest growing. That creates massive opportunities for, founders that understand that these underserved markets, and when I talk about underserved, I mean that, across socioeconomic segments, right? Sometimes people hear underserved and think low income. I believe that we're all underserved in many ways in big sectors, in large sectors. And so I'm excited about Latino founders that understand that they can use disruptive technologies not only to address these needs, but to solve for access or better services, but that understand the cultural nuances that exist when approaching these evolving needs. And so that's really at the core of my strategy. And that's where I think that, founders whose background position them to understand better these demographics will lead the way. And honestly, the Latino economy is key to continue driving the growth of the US economy overall. And as a major goal, I would invite Latino founders to understand what's their competitive edge, and that cultural competence, as I call it, is relevant. Given my experience in US and abroad, that cultural affinity is key. And it's, although we're all very different, but again, cultural differences that can be capitalized to enhance the further growth of this economy. I think when you talk about challenges, at Ascendo, I'm capitalizing on asymmetric opportunities, right? So on one hand, you have underserved markets, which I just described, but on the other hand, you have also segments that have less access to capital. And Latino founders, only receive, along with other minorities, less than 3% of overall venture capital. I believe that could be a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. It's an opportunity for founders to find investors that really understand these segments and tap into it first.
And part of that is getting investors in the space that reflect that, right? Because we know that bias is very present in the investing community, and people like to invest in something that they understand, and they don't understand it, they're going to be asking very elemental questions, right? And so something that I want to kind of double tap into, Laura, is we often hear this fifth largest GDP figure about Latinos. And I think getting more specific about that would really benefit us in terms of how we tap into it, right? How do we tap into this growing GDP that we have, and also the spending power that we have, right? We often talk about our spending power, but the other thing I've heard about our spending power is that it often leaves our community. It exits out. Let's talk about maybe both. How do we tap into the power of our GDP, and how do we tap into our spending power? How do we bring that money back into our community, or are you seeing that shift already?
The Latino economy is projected to have 2.5 trillion in buying power. Now, how do we make sure that part of that buying power is not only being spent, but also not only saved, but actually invested as well, right, to create wealth? And so that's a perfect example of an industry where I think the cultural and education background is important. So, I always like to share my own experience. I mean, I studied economics. I, graduated from an MBA. So you would think that, as I started in private equity, you would think as a finance person, when I graduated, I was investing in the market. And I didn't, because, I grew up thinking that paying debt, saving money, and buying your house were very important assets, right? In hindsight, I should have invested whatever in the market. Even a small amount would have gone a long way. So I really don't want us to miss that opportunity as a community. And as you know, the Latino population is 20% of the market, but it's also the youngest, right? And so it's about a third of the students that are between K and 12 are, Latinos. So that's massive for, opportunity for education, for how we relate to wealth, how we believe that we can create wealth. A lot of is, and that's what I mean by cultural, nuances. And, to give you an example, like my first investment was in Suma. Well, that's the perfect for me example of how you bridge culture to financial access and financial products, right? And so by providing those, I don't know if I'm sure you are familiar with Suma and Bea, that, Suma has over 1 million users, yet 30%, and targeting the young Latino population, yet 30% are not. Because of course, we're betting on founders that will appeal to the whole US, but that have a cultural edge within this segment that traditionally has not necessarily invested, or that is first time, approaching financial products from a different standpoint.
And for listeners that may not be familiar with Suma, we have had that on Moneda Moves. We had Beatriz previously. It's a fintech platform targeted at Latinos. Beatriz has a wonderful background as well in media, having led We Are Mitu, which, if you recall, is also a Latino media platform. So very, very savvy in connecting with our Latino audiences online as well, and having roadmaps for building wealth in addition to having a place to talk about money.
Yeah. So that's to me one of the, like, what I mean by how do you address cultural or capitalize on cultural nuances to bring in. And I think you are right, like we really need, and I'm really focused on those solutions that, either drive costs, but that blend education with access and, our relationship within wealth creation, our relationship with money as well.
So quite literally investing in our Latino founders and also investing in that opportunity, because you said there's so many Latinos that are on the younger end. That means the highest of our opportunity, the most of our GDP creation is ahead of us, which is a really exciting place to be in. I also want to ask you about, especially right now that we're moving into a territory where, politically speaking, DEI is a challenge term in the United States, following affirmative action cases that came from Ivy League and now have bled into corporate. This has been going for 1.5 years now to 2 years. So talk to us about how you seek founders to invest in, and like, how do you suggest that other VCs better identify and support high potential companies? Period. Because I'm sure how you assess Latinos is how you would look at high potential companies, period, right? Like, you're assessing for the same level of acuity and also like business proof of concept. So talk to us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to be aware about the trends, but that also can be a distraction, right? So as you know, one of my taglines is that I leverage diversity as a strategic advantage in the pursuit of alpha. And so what do I mean by that? Throughout my career, I've experienced that, diverse teams, diverse backgrounds, again, your lived experience really creates innovation. It's an opportunity to drive growth and drive innovation. And of course, yes, how do I do that? Not only by focusing in diversity per se, but like following the business case of the founder, right? Like, how is this founder gonna be able to grow, scale, and bring that experience into life in what, they're building and driving. So once you have cleared that the business case is there, my experience at Endeavor, which is a global network of high impact founders, and I can talk more about that network, but as part of my experience building Endeavor Miami, Endeavor has demonstrated that great founders come from all backgrounds. Endeavor today is the largest network of unicorns outside the US because it started outside the US. So it grew first outside the US. And so that only tells me that, of course, there's amazing talent, and today more relevant because of the demographic shifts that I just explained. And so how do we find them? Well, we need to be intentional, right? So why do we have this venture gap? I'm very pragmatic. I'm an economist in training, right? Like, I studied economics. So I look at the markets and I say, okay, why do we have this gap? When you're investing in founders at early stage, when you're investing in companies early stage, you're betting on the founder. And so cultural affinity with the founder is relevant. And so the risk, like, the job of an investor is to the risk as much the investment, right? And so there's certain comfort zone in investing in the people that or that get referred. And so to me, that's actually the most important opportunity. How do we build this ecosystem where the networks are disconnected? And so for investors to find these Latinos, or any other founders that has less access to capital for that matter, I believe in intentionality. I believe in, like Ascendo, how do we solve for that? Well, we're very intentional, and we believe in proximity investing would really take, time in developing networks and bridges across networks. That's one. The other thing is also, like if any sector, right? Like, not only in terms of diverse backgrounds, but you need to be intentional in your own expertise in the industry, right? Like, so similarly with for deal flow and for building the scale of capital, I think it's important to partner with other funds as well that are like-minded and driven by this purpose, right? And so, we do have a big economic opportunity ahead, and the investors that understand this will benefit more than the ones that don't. And I see that again as a big opportunity, but I understand that this is not for everyone, right? And so at Ascendo, I've been very focused in really calling for, and inviting to join Ascendo, investors and partners that understand the potential, the economic opportunity, but that are also excited about the segments.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, I love your pragmatism. I love that you're like your background also being an economist, and you come with the facts, you come ready with the numbers, but you also see an opportunity. What do you think are the, like in my eyes, I say you're looking at a what entrepreneurs would call a blue sky opportunity. Like there's not a lot of investment or VCs or investing firms that have flooded this market, especially when you think about not just like directly south of us, Mexico, and I know both of us are Mexicanas, but like the Caribbean and the entire Latin American market. What do you think is what are some of the biggest humps when it comes to talking to investors, like even as a fund manager, talking to like partners to invest in a firm like yours? What are some of the, like, you mentioned cultural, but like what are some of the biggest like gaps there that we see?
Yeah. There's are some investors that believe that, a thesis based on demographic segments is not, per se will drive value, right? I completely believe the opposite, right? Like, we do need a very strong middle class in the US to continue to grow and drive growth. And you need to look at who is growing, and, that is changing, and that's a fact. And so from that viewpoint, I think investors have on one side be more open. What really excites me, and I think what you're asking, in terms of the potential of cross-border opportunities as well, is
Right.
that, I spent half of my career in working throughout Latin America, and then the other half here, right, in the US. So, at Ascendo, I'm investing in US growth, right? Like in founders that are driving or focused on the US growth. Having said that, I really see a very interesting pipeline of founders from Latin America that already have experience building outside the US that can tap into this market as well. Or the other way around, founders, here in the US that can, capitalize on opportunities that lower cost because of the proximity of Latin America in terms of labor, in terms of other opportunities, that can, there are pan-regional opportunities. And I believe that, part of the strength to drive more competitiveness to the US is understanding those pan-regional opportunities to compete against the rest of the world, mainly Asia, right? That's where you really build volume and momentum and potential growth. That's still a long-term view, but I really think that, specifically, cross-border, there's many cross-border opportunities. There are some industries that are more obvious. My second investment is it's in Live Financial. It's an embedded remittances and payments technology with conversational AI. It's a huge opportunity to continue to, lower costs for those segments, bring more economic power to migrant workers, but at the end of it, but also digitize that segment, right? So, that's obvious because, the Latin American US market is the largest corridor in remittances. But, there's also opportunities in terms of anything that has to do with nearshoring or logistics or other opportunities. In general, I would tell you that talent in Latin America is really good, and that's an opportunity also for operations, having operations in Latin America while growing in the US.
Yeah, 100%. And to clarify, yes, thank you for clarifying that Ascendo does focus domestically right now. I think I was thinking internationally because you also have
Yeah.
such a great international experience with your corporate life. So thank you for diving into that because you're right. There is such a big cross-border international opportunity here. More of the entrepreneurs that I talk to, more people are hiring internationally. I'm seeing cases where businesses are expanding from here to Latin America, especially with online businesses. I spoke with a very successful Edtech Colombian business called BizNation that is expanding here and starting contracts with big companies, the likes of UPS. So we definitely see that cross-border kind of intermingling, and I suspect that will continue. And then remittances, you're absolutely right. That's so big. I remember this article that struck me that I read in Washington Post about like the biggest day for remittances to Latin America. I think it was Latin America overall. The biggest day being Mother's Day, when immigrants send
Oh, yeah.
the largest amount of remittances, and Western Union would track this. But like, imagine if you could do that at a click of a button, just like sending a Zelle, right? So
Absolutely.
so much opportunity there.
Absolutely. And I think that's also a competitive advantage of being based in Miami. Geographically, Miami is perfectly good position to, and it's diverse in nature, right? So I am investing nationwide, but I do have access to these amazing founders that are from Latin America moving here. It's a hub. And for immigrants in general, now we have Europeans, Latin Americans, and Americans as well. So I'm really excited about the potential of connecting those networks, and I think they're disconnected among themselves as well. So I'm looking at pipeline from Latin America, founders that have moved here and are building. I'm looking at a pipeline from Latino, second, third generation here in the US, and both have great potential and synergies among themselves as well.
That's an exciting place to be. So when it comes to thinking about industries and where you see the trends headed, what are some of the industries that 2025 will have most of your attention for investments? What do you see like is in great need, on the rise?
Yeah, I mean, I already mentioned that fintech is one of my, core focus. One of the stats I didn't mention is that of the, Latino population, 22% are underbanked, and so huge potential on financial services. Latinos are also digital first. Are 70% are digital already. So there's a lot of opportunities for mobile first solutions.
Curious, the underbanked, does that sit, because I hear that stat too, but does that sit, because we're also digitally savvy, does that sit with older generations? Is that where
Well, the stat that I have is overall, when you look at Latino population overall, is 22%. I'm assuming because we just said that, Latinos are the youngest. I'm assuming that proportionally that 22 is with the oldest, right? I mean,
okay, so
it makes
it's
sense
about
because
capturing that audience.
yeah, it's capturing that audience. And yeah, so it's 70% use mobile devices, and it's one of the demographics that uses more, digital services. So there's a big potential for any mobile first solution. In Healthtech, obviously. So my verticals, in my case is fintech, Healthtech, future of work, and enterprise SaaS in general. But on Healthtech, of course, digital solutions that solve for access, but I also think that there's a lot of potential for diagnostics because, as you know, an ECT plays a big role for, targeted and personalized medicine as well. I think in healthcare, everyone in the US is underserved. So, there's a lot of innovation that can be done there. There's also across these segments, there's opportunities for Spanish or language solutions, right? There's still a blend, and sometimes language is a barrier. So, with AI, disrupting, and, of course, the use of LLMs, how can entrepreneurs use AI as a tool to engage different parts of the US and different demographics, and maybe language is one avenue to engage beyond education and culture. And, I'm particularly, interested in defining what future of work means to me. There's future of work is a lot and everything, and for, because it doesn't exist, right? And so I really want to look at, AI driven solutions that really can help bring more access, more skills, or reskilling for, the workforce. So that's how I broadly define it. But, I'm in the process of honing it down, because otherwise it's, it can be massive. I think for the most part, though, that's where I'm focused. I think you said it before. I mean, I think the sky is the limit. I think that founders can build in any industry they want. The US is growing, and there's, with the technological disruption, that opens opportunities across industries. I believe too that with the gig economy and the creator economy, again, that creativity, that culture, that differentiation also creates a plus. And any data driven solution that informs brands and companies how these segments are, performing, is going to be continue to be very relevant as the population continues to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely agree. So let's say we're a founder, we're sitting down and we're listening to this podcast, as I do get a lot of listeners here. Some of the questions that I have gotten as of late has to do around funding, right? Like I'm speaking with entrepreneurs at really all levels, even small business thinking of going into CPG, early stage, pre-seed, seed, and then later stage. And one of the questions that I often get is around what kind of capital folks should be using. And you're definitely a person to speak about anything from private equity, which you have plenty of experience in. You also have experience in fintech now running as at a VC firm, running head. So can you talk to us about what Latinos should be thinking about to secure the right type of funding for their business? That's part one of the question, and then I'll dive into part two.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I was a little surprised by a statistics that just recently was reviewing that Latino business owners in general are 50% more likely to seek for outside capital, and yet they have the lowest or lower approval loan rates, right? So I'm talking about broadly, and so that's a huge opportunity for access to capital too for us as investors, obviously. But what I would like to say to founders that are thinking about that, I think that, there are different ways to scale your business. And the most important thing first is to understand where in that scale you want to play, right? And so everything is difficult. I always tell founders, and I tell it to myself as well as I'm building Ascendo. I'm very, I'm closer to the founder right now, building the fund. But I always say, things that matter are difficult to build, right? So it's going to be difficult. So you might as well really be in tune with your purpose, or really be driven and motivated to drive it, because, you might as well just do what you like and find that competitive edge. So once they found that competitive edge and they want to scale, the first question is, do I want to be a venture-backed business, or do I want to stay as a lifestyle business, right? And both are fine. You just need to know what you want. And lifestyle business means that, you do create growth, and that you grow organically, and maybe you use for financing options that are more loans, or there's, of course, if you're a small business, there's small business instruments as well that founders can access, and that's one way. And that the difference of that is that there's really no pressure to grow other than your competition, right? Other than staying relevant in the market. There's always some pressure. If you really have aspirations to scale and be big and really disrupt and, be first to market, I mean, there's many reasons why you want outside capital. Maybe because, there's a competitive advantage of being first to market, because you want to, scale, or, you see opportunities across markets that you want to tap into, and you need more capital for that. That, then invites you to another different path, which is, okay, for the most part, Latinos within grow up with, already we're not born with a trust fund, right? So, the family might or might not have money for, which is how founders usually start, with family and friends around. So angels, of course, are, a huge part of it. And so that's where I think the intentionality matters. Intentionality in building networks early on as you're building your business makes it's relevant once you decided that you want to go that way. And the difference of joining that path is that, yes, that capital will take you a long way. But it will be fast paced. And once you enter that journey, every investor in every different stage, will want to eventually, exit, right? And have a return. So that by definition is a very different path, because then you are partnering with investors that will go through your journey and are long-term capital. However, we are all expecting a return. And so there are founders that are driven by that, and exits and sale are different ways. That means that you want to grow your business and have impact and sell it, or eventually IPO, which is great, and you can continue to build the big company. But there has to be that component of, fast-paced liquidity, because once you enter in the venture capital world, there's always a metric of success based on how growth for you to continue building.
To keep
Yeah.
growing.
Yeah. And now there's many ways, right? Like, I've known founders that have scaled amazing companies bootstrapped and are, would have been venture backable. I know founders that, just, maybe did early stage funding and had VCs early on, but they grew so fast that they didn't need to do later rounds. That's amazing, right? And there are founders that require the capital to continue to do, what we call Series A, B, C, D. What I think is more important is really understanding who you're bringing to the table. I believe that, venture needs to be disrupted too. And so one of the reasons why I'm building Ascendo is because I think that the industry has become very transactional, and, there's an opportunity to build funds that come with operating experience and what I call, founder investor synergy, right? That you understand the founder journey, because you want to create that partnership, although the founder will continue to drive and you're a minority. But, in my case, I believe that my differentiation and my aspiration is for founders to, when things go wrong, call me, feel comfortable to call me, and, beyond capital, perhaps with my network or with my experience, I can help, manage that challenge or that risk, right? That the founders are always managing that. And I think once you tap into a good market, my experience with founders has shown me that either beyond access to capital is access to the right people, but it's also a very lonely journey. So access to people that can guide you or that have done it, that you trust, other founders, right? Being in founder circles, it's really good for the growth of your own company, but then also disciplined execution. Some founders do not remember that. And so having that investor that gives you that cadence to learn to scale, that is also key, I think.
Yeah, Laura, thank you so much for breaking it down in that way, because I do think that a lot of folks come with the question of like, hey, like, I'm not sure if VC funding is for me. And I think it's important to hear that, to say like, well, maybe it's not for you. We know successful companies that have bootstrapped. We know that a portion of the Latino community doesn't have access to the friends and family network. And that has to do with probably socioeconomic background, right? Like, or human capital as well.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to consider all of the options. And like you said, what are you building for, right? Like, are you building for lifestyle business, or are you set, and do you aspire to scale, to maybe exit, IPO, whatever it may be? So 2025, and looking at this next year, a lot of founders are looking at perhaps like what they might view as a little bit more of a competitive landscape when it comes to securing, in particular, VC funding. So you, as a founder and partner at Ascendo, what is it that you look for in a founder that's coming up to you and delivering, whether it's a pitch, a cold email, like they've just come into your network? What are you looking for in the founder and the company that they're building for potential investment?
Yeah. I'm founder first, so I really take the time to learn about the founding team. As I said, their lived experience, how is that relevant to what they're building, and if they are connected to that passion, and what motivates me, that motivates them. That to me is very relevant. Gives me a lot of information because I'm investing in seed and Series A, and that's very early. So I'm betting mostly on the founding team. The complementarity of the team is very important, how those backgrounds, tie or not into the growth of the company. And beyond that, as I said, focus on the business case, right? Is this founder going to be able to scale? Is this founder aligned with the venture backable model, right? Is this a venture backable business? And so what does that mean? That means that I'm looking for founders that are building companies that are target billion-dollar, markets or industries, right? That can really have a competitive edge to scale. And then also just the willingness of the founder to really partner and be part of this ecosystem that I'm building alongside other investors that are building new funds, right? I think that takes a unique personality. But of course, we're also just in general looking for scale, for growth, and for exit, right? So is the company that they're building going to be able to generate the return that we're expecting, and how can we help, and the impact. So the communities that they are serving, to me, is important, and how they their ethos is around that, and also how I can help. How can Ascendo and my network help? That's very relevant to me, because then I can drive more growth. And so those are a few of them, but I'm sure I'm missing some. Some are automatic
No,
that we do when we talk to founders.
Something that I'm really hearing about Ascendo that I really appreciate is the fact that you're looking beyond just like the transactional nature of it. Like you said, you're looking to build a relationship, and that involves not just what can they bring to me, but I'm in this relationship. What can I bring to them? Can I really help make this company successful? Which, like, it's interesting. I did an angel investing academy this year, because it's funny. I'd done so much work in later stage and comms on that end, but I was just like, wait, like, what happens at the earlier stage? Like, I'd love to get involved in that. And that is something that I think was really great in terms of framing that we learned with Inicio Ventures. It was about making sure that there's a relationship. What can you bring to the table as the investor? How can you contribute to their success so that the pie grows for everybody? Right? Yeah. Like and it makes so much sense. It's not a reasonable expectation to say, hey, this company is going to automatically bring me everything if I'm not putting anything into it. I mean, of course, capital, but also you have talent. So thank you so much for sharing all of your experience with us, Laura, and for sharing more about what you're building at Ascendo. Really excited to continue to see it rise, ascend, pun intended. And then the last question that I ask all of our guests here is about your money moves. So what has been your biggest money move?
It's definitely deciding to align my purpose by building Ascendo. I believe my purpose is to, be a change maker, to transform industries, and I want to do it within the venture capital industry. And it was a very conscious decision of of betting in myself, taking risk, and knowing that it was going to be hard. I face very similar opportunities and challenges as any other founder, but I really love what I do. So I think that's my biggest Moneda moves. I can tell you that I was reflecting on that question, and I see my career. As you see, I changed several times, and I think every single decision has been one Moneda move. And I think I do it by either every 5 years or every decade. Is very interesting.
We have the potential to live so many careers, and I particularly enjoy speaking to people that see the opportunities for different phases, like in different range in their lives. So again, thank you so much for sharing yours with us.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too. Thank you, mi gente, for joining us this week on Moneda Moves. Before you go, please make sure to hit follow on this podcast so you can receive new episodes right when they are released. You can follow right now in the app you're using to listen to this podcast. Also, continue keeping cuentas and keeping tabs on our Latinx community and money moves via our free newsletter,
written by yours truly at monedamoves.substack.com. That's monedamoves.substack.com. I'll see you there. Hasta la próxima.